Good afternoon, members of the media, wider viewing and listening public of Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to this afternoon's media conference. And really, to speak to the citizens, I've asked for this conference here this afternoon to speak through you, the media, to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago about what is undoubtedly one of the foremost issues on our minds as the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and that's the issue of crime and how we are dealing with crime at a national security level. I have with me here this afternoon our Chief of Defence Staff, Air Commodore Daryl Daniel, and I also have with me Assistant Commissioner of Police, Mr. Jason Ford, who is in charge of anti-crime operations. I'd like to start off by reminding the public, almost a year ago when I assumed the office and the additional portfolio of Minister of National Security, one of the first comments I permitted myself to say and to share with you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. In national security, very often there are matters and specifics that we cannot and we should not speak about, especially when it comes to operational issues. Because of course we always need to try and maintain whatever little advantage we have. Because by definition, the criminal elements in our society, who continue to be a very small minority, but unfortunately a very influential minority in criminality, we need to maintain. They don't, by definition, they don't abide by law. They are lawless, they don't respect the law very often, and therefore when we are planning operations, when we're implementing plans and we're implementing use of technology, there's very little that we should be prepared to say, because we can lose that operational advantage very, very easily. That's the first point I'd like to say. The second point is, undoubtedly, as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, and as the individual at Cabinet charged with the responsibility of national security, as the Minister of National Security, I am extremely concerned about the level of crime in Trinidad and Tobago, and have been so for some time. In fact, just this week, on two of my engagements where I engaged the media, one at the launch of library facilities in Barataria earlier last week, and then secondly, on Friday, when I was at NALIS and our National Library in Port of Spain, speaking at the end of a camp for young children who had spent 2 weeks reading, I did express that the levels of crime, as far as I am concerned, are unacceptable. On Friday afternoon, I had called a meeting with various divisional commanders of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I had the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force, our intelligence services, our transnational crime unit, as well as the prison services and immigration, for us to discuss a number of initiatives and plan a number of operations that went into effect from Friday. Unfortunately, in the last week, we have seen within recent times, certainly within recent times, what can only be described as an unacceptable upsurge in the levels of murder that have taken place within the last 7 days. I'd like to start by saying that as a Minister of National Security, we cannot accept this. What we do about it is what I've come here to discuss with you all this afternoon. It is also important to note, without burying our heads in the sand, that we did not reach this level overnight. I have not come here today to discuss the past or to put blame on anyone whatsoever from the past, but rather to discuss what we're dealing with in the present. But the point must be made that unfortunately Trinidad and Tobago did not get here overnight. And the question is, what do we do about it now, and what do we do about it going into the near future? I think it would be useful at this stage to categorize the 3 important elements, as I see it, that are affecting us with this criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. Illegal firearms, undoubtedly and without fear of contradiction, the biggest issue facing us in crime and the fight against crime today in Trinidad and Tobago is the prevalence and availability of illegal arms and ammunition. Just yesterday on one of our operations, you all would have seen that the police in the Southern Division on one of our southern beaches of Trinidad managed to intercept and pick up some very sophisticated assault rifles, some AR-15s, AK-47, a Tech-9 firearm. This is an example of the type of firearms that we're facing on our streets out there. So illegal firearms are undoubtedly the biggest element that we face in crime. All of the murders last week were committed, except one, via the use of illegal firearms. You must accept, we all accept, that you will only be carrying an illegal firearm to commit the act of murder. A gun is made, a firearm is made to kill. That is the reality of the situation. And if you are carrying an illegal firearm, there can be no legitimate reason for you to be carrying an illegal firearm. You can carry firearms legally in Trinidad and Tobago via firearm users license that are issued by the Commissioner of Police. We know our Commissioner of Police, Mr. Griffith, has been dealing with the applications for issuance of FULs, as we call them, firearm users licenses. So let us accept, first of all, as a society, that the only reason a person would have an illegal firearm in his or her possession is to commit a murder and to commit the most heinous of acts of crime against fellow law-abiding citizens. So firearms and illegal firearms. Secondly, we don't manufacture firearms in Trinidad and Tobago. And long gone are the days where you would find the police finding homemade shotguns and old rusty revolvers. As I said in my parliamentary debate in the Senate about a month ago when we were debating legislation to deal with amendments to the Firearm Act, the vast majority of handguns we're picking up now, over half being used, are sophisticated Glocks, semi-automatic pistols, and one known as a Glock, which is a very simple piece but a very efficient piece of equipment. And those are the types of illegal firearms in addition to the sophisticated AR-15s and AK-47s. We don't manufacture those in Trinidad and Tobago, so border security is the next big issue that we've been focusing on. The third issue, which is the persons who are carrying out all of these heinous acts against us law-abiding citizens in Trinidad and Tobago, gangs. As you know, we have been focused on gangs and gang activity. Mr. Ford will address us on some, but he cannot get into any level of detail as to what has been taking place with the use of the anti-gang legislation and what the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has been doing in our operations targeting these gangs and that criminal element that gather together as gangs in Trinidad and Tobago. I have asked our Chief of Defense Staff to just tell us, again, without getting into the operational side, what it is we've been doing from the border aspect and what we've been doing to strengthen our border security. And I would like to reassure you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, quite a lot has been done in this area. So I'd like to start, and then what I will do is I will then provide an overall, and I will then tell you all from the government's perspective some of the initiatives that we intend to roll out to deal with these particular aspects. So I'd like to turn us over, first of all, to our Chief of Defense Staff, Air Commodore Daryl Daniel, for him to tell us what the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force has been doing to provide support to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, but also specifically to talk to us a little bit about the border security.
Members of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, members of the media, Honorable Minister, thank you. Good afternoon. The Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force continues to do our role in terms of securing our borders, with patrols daily by the regiment, the Coast Guard, and the Air Guard on land, sea, and in the air, on a daily basis, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Of course, you'd appreciate the challenge with being a twin island state and our proximity to Venezuela and the challenges that are next door. It's almost impossible to be everywhere at the same time. So we are doing the best we can do using all our assets, the radar, the coastal 360-degree coastal radar surveillance system that we have, and our vessels as well as our aircraft, along with men and women on the ground to supplement where it's possible. Those efforts have realized almost over 500 contacts of interest being intercepted and processed, patrols amounting more than 2,000 patrols in the midst of that, we still have to do things like search and rescue. So when we get called from citizens who are stranded at sea or lost, we have to respond to that. And you'd appreciate assets will have to be moved from the border security to address those issues and would go back as soon as they can, including Medivacs as well. With respect to assistance to the TTPS, in light of all that I've mentioned with the border security, we also work with the police to assist them in operations as targeted and required to address the crime situation. We don't have an endless supply of men and women to do these things, and you would appreciate that challenge. But rest assured that the Defence Force is doing all it can with its assets and with its personnel to address the issues at hand.
Thank you very much, Chief of Defence Staff, Commodore Darrell Daniel. I'd now like to pass us over to ACP Ford, who has been doing, I can say from personal experience, has been a great pleasure to work with Mr. Ford over the past year. The energy that he brings, the experience that he brings, his level of drive and commitment is certainly a great indictment on the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in a positive way. So I have great pleasure in Mr. Ford joining me here this afternoon. I'll turn it over to him for him to tell us a little bit about the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service's efforts with respect to the gangs in Trinidad and Tobago and the illegal firearms.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Trinidad and Tobago, a pleasant afternoon to all of you. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service continues to keep its vision of making every place in Trinidad and Tobago safe, if not safer. We continue to do that in partnership with you all. We cannot do it alone. Unfortunately, at this time in our history, the firearms seems to be the weapon of choice for gang members and all persons who appear to be wanting to involve in illegal activities in our beautiful, and I want to stress beautiful, Twin Island Republic. The level of killings that we have had recently within the past few weeks, we all agree that level is unacceptable. We have ramped up our enthusiasm, we have ramped up our exercises so that, as the Minister said, we are here to talk about what we have done and what we are going to do. But I'm just going to share with you what we have been doing. The Minister called a meeting on Friday for us to share with him what our intentions were as it relates to anti-crime activities, anti-crime operations for the weekend. Before the Minister had called that meeting, I, as the ACP Crime, with assistance from the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Crime and Support, Mr. Harold Phillip, we had called a meeting on Thursday, that just gone, to deal with the same issues. And coming out of that meeting and the meeting with the Minister, we ramped up our activities. Between 6 p.m. Friday and 6 a.m. this morning, we have arrested in excess of 100 persons suspected of committing illegal acts in this country. We have seized in excess of 25 firearms. And I want you to look at the scale of what is being shared with you here today. Between 6 p.m. on Friday and 6 a.m. this morning, we, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, with assistance from the Defence Force and other law enforcement agencies, have been able to seize 25 firearms, a huge percentage of which are high-powered rifles. As it relates to the gangs and the activities, as the Minister has said, we cannot go into specifics, even though we want to share with you. We are dealing with a group across Trinidad and Tobago that we may take for granted, but they have a level of intelligence that has allowed them to continue their nefarious activities. But not only that, they have been getting the necessary advice to continue, so that they are waiting for occasions like these for us to reveal our strategies, our intimate strategies, so that they can plan. We have to be a step ahead of them. We have been conducting extensive and exhaustive inquiries towards bringing an end to the gang activity in Trinidad and Tobago. We have several gang units within our country that are pursuing active inquiries. And we are not out on a limb by ourselves on adventures of our own. We have been seeking advice from the Director of Public Prosecutions, who has been guiding us. And in the not too distant future, you will be seeing arrests. We have had arrests. We have put persons before the court. We have other persons who are ready for arrest. But we cannot arrest them because of the sensitive nature of the inquiries and because of what they are sharing. We cannot arrest them. But we give you, I give you, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service gives you that assurance that in the not too distant future, we will be arresting persons and putting them before the court en masse for gang activities in Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ford. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, I have just come from another meeting where I'd like to share with you all the level of participation in that meeting that I just chaired that ended a few minutes ago before joining this press conference. From the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we had the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Harold Phillip, Mr. Ford, and others. We had the divisional commanders from the Western Division, the Northeastern Division, the Southern Division, the Southwestern Division. We had from Homicide, the head of Homicide, Deputy Head of Homicide, the divisional commanders from the Eastern Division, the Central Division, the Southern Division, the IATF, the CID, the Northern Division, the Port of Spain Division, Northwestern Division, Anti-Crime, and then our OCIU, now SIU unit. That was from the police point of view. We had the representatives headed by and led by the Chief of Defense Staff from the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the commanding officer of our Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, Captain Archer, Colonel Ned from the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment side. I had the intelligence services there. I had the transnational organized crime unit there, and I had prisons there as well. I took the time to share this information with you, to let you, the public of Trinidad and Tobago, know that one of the mantras under my stewardship has been multi-agency work. And I have kept stressing it and ensuring that it's being implemented, that there is no siloing of intelligence and information. As a result of that, we have been seeing greater levels of success. As you all have heard Mr. Ford say, that commitment from Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are hoping that in the not too distant future, you all will see the results. I had said very early in my tenure, I did not have any intention of being a person who always engaged and spoke about what it is we're doing at national security unless necessary. But I prefer that we see the positive results. These things take time. Under the anti-gang legislation, it was not retroactive. We then had to begin from the time the legislation was passed. And I can assure you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, because on a weekly basis, I ask for a briefing as to what is going on. I can assure you the anti-gang legislation is being properly utilized under the supervision of the Director of Public Prosecutions. The gathering of evidence, the gathering of intelligence and information, and the transformation of that to evidence is the process that takes place before someone is charged. So you gather intelligence, you gather information, that then needs to be converted into evidence, charges are then laid, and of course the threshold for these charges are possible successful convictions, and that is what we're aiming for. That work has been carrying on. I'd also like to say that with respect to the border security, Cabinet has taken the decisions. We had taken a decision a few months ago to upgrade our radar system. The radar system is working. This Thursday's Cabinet gone past. Cabinet also, and I thank my Cabinet colleagues, and in particular the Chairman of National Security Council for understanding the importance of what I took to Cabinet another note to further upgrade our radar system to provide us with some state-of-the-art technology that I hope will be implemented in the not-too-distant future. Cabinet approved and confirmed that on Thursday gone, we will be expending $2.8 million, and the use of that technology, implementing it in our radar system, is going to give us a further advantage in helping us to protect our borders. Initiatives. I held very early morning discussions today with the chairman of the National Security Council, the Honorable Prime Minister. And I'm announcing here today, prior to going to my meeting with the heads of our law enforcement, our intelligence agencies, our defense force a short while ago, I spoke to the Trinidad and Tobago Crime Stoppers organization. We are going to be launching an initiative because, you see, we require the assistance of citizens to have breakthroughs. I talked about illegal firearms. I'm happy today to say one of the initiatives we will be rolling out is with respect to illegal firearms, and we will be offering rewards through the Crime Stoppers program, where persons can call in anonymously and provide law enforcement through Crime Stoppers with information and intelligence to help us to locate caches, stashes from 1 upwards of illegal arms and ammunition in Trinidad and Tobago. And the government will fund this initiative that if we successfully search and recover as a result of information provided by you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, caches of illegal firearms, we are prepared to offer rewards for that. This is going to be worked out in the next few days with Crime Stoppers. I spoke to them before, and they're happy to assist the government with this. It leads me to another point. You, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, very frequently witness and see crimes taking place or the criminality taking place in your communities. We are today re-energizing, reinvigorating, and also requesting, I am requesting as a citizen, as a Minister of National Security, that you utilize Crime Stoppers as an anonymous initiative to provide us with the information that we need to get some further breakthroughs with crime that is taking place across Trinidad and Tobago. It is impossible for all of these criminal activities to be taking place and law-abiding citizens are not seeing it. We're not asking you at this stage, although if you can, we would appreciate that you do, but we're not asking at this stage you come forward and give evidence. Let us utilize these anonymous tip-off points like Crime Stoppers to provide us with the information. We will do the work on our side. Also, as you know, we've been working with the judiciary. The Attorney General has brought a number of pieces of legislation to Parliament to assist the criminal justice system to become more efficient. We ask for the continued support for that. Illegal firearms. As the Minister of National Security, there were 2 pieces of legislation that I worked with the Attorney General on recently, and both have been passed through the Senate and are now required to go to the House of Representatives for debate and passage in the House of Representatives. I'd like the public of Trinidad and Tobago to understand how important these tools are for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to fight and combat the scourge of illegal firearms. The first is amendments to the bail legislation in Trinidad and Tobago, and to make it that persons who are caught with illegal firearms are not allowed bail for up to 120 days, within which the police must bring the charges and pursue the charges in the criminal courts against them. The statistics show that the vast majority of persons with illegal firearms are repeat firearm offenders. And as I said a short while ago, illegal firearms have no place in our society and can only be used to commit the most heinous of crimes, including up to murder in Trinidad and Tobago. Providing the police service with the ability to keep persons in prison and not have them access bail, these repeat firearm offenders, these shooters, these agents of criminality, is going to assist us. The other piece of legislation are amendments to the Firearms Act. For example, for the first time, and it was passed by the Senate, for the first time now we will have trafficking, illegal trafficking in firearms as a specific offense. It shocked me to know all these decades later, we never had a specific offense, an express offense under the Firearms Act of trafficking in firearms. Once this legislation is passed, and it requires the commitment of those in the House of Representatives, and I give the public, you have the assurance today of the government, 23 votes of the government will be cast in favor of this firearm and bail amendment legislation. We're also making it more difficult. We're increasing the level of fines for a first offender with firearms. Before it was up at a maximum of $15,000. We're now carrying that up to, I believe, $150,000. If you are a repeat offender and caught on the second time, we are passing legislation that you cannot get a fine. You will spend time in prison. It is not right to tell the law-abiding citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that this is draconian legislation. We are all aware of these illegal firearms being used to terrorize our law-abiding citizens. I am publicly calling now, today, for the support and the public support behind these two pieces of legislation. A third offender, if you're so stupid to continue to carry illegal firearms and continue to want to terrorize our law-abiding citizens, and you're caught and convicted on a third time with the use of an illegal firearm, life imprisonment. And I say today, as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago and as the Minister of National Security, this is not draconian. This is what our society requires at this point in time, because there can be, and there is no legitimate reason to have an illegal firearm in your possession. This is what we're doing from a legislative point of view. These two pieces of legislation alone will go a long way in discouraging those who want to participate in our society and to be traversing our society with illegal firearms in their possession. As I say, we've been gathering a lot of information with intelligence, converting that information and intelligence into evidence. You've heard ACP Ford tell us today that they have been working assiduously, and I know they have, and meticulously, along with the Director of Public Prosecutions, and I hope to see the results of that work in the not-too-distant future. I end by telling you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, as the Minister of National Security, I'm fully committed to continuing to provide whatever leadership I can and to working to ensure that our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is properly resourced. I've seen it being suggested that they aren't properly resourced. I turned to the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Griffith, this week in our weekly meeting, the second meeting of 3 this week, and asked him, why is it that they keep suggesting that you aren't properly resourced? Is there anything that you continue to need that we can provide? And he said, no, sir. We are making do and we are prioritizing with the money that we have. And right now we have sufficient, and we will continue to press on with the resources. You have the government's commitment, and the same thing goes for the Defense Force. We don't have all of the money in the world, but what I have been pressing with the heads is let us prioritize how we spend that money, and that includes with the prison system or fire services. So I give you the commitment of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and I have been getting the support of my cabinet colleagues. We will do all that we can to ensure the continued resourcing of our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, our Defense Force, Customs, Immigration, our intelligence services. We're upgrading the technology with our intelligence services as well, our fire services, and all of the arms of national security. And I end by asking you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, the law-abiding citizens, partner with us. We cannot win this battle alone. We require your help and assistance. Those two initiatives, the use of Crime Stoppers, tell us where you know these illegal firearm caches are stored, and the illegal firearms are stored in your community. We will action it. We will come and we will get those firearms off of the street, and you will remain safe because it will be provided anonymously. Also provide us with the tips, continue providing us with the information as to criminal activities that may be taking place in your various communities. And we will do what we can to stamp on and to attack those elements of criminals in our society. Thank you all very much for your attention and your time this afternoon. As I give you the assurance, we will continue to work tirelessly, 24/7, to do what we can to fight against the criminal element in society. And with your support, the public support in Trinidad and Tobago, we will make inroads into fighting the criminal elements in Trinidad and Tobago. I'll take a few questions at this stage.
Minister,
Just
are you
identify
saying,
yourself for...
good day, Mark Bessan from Guardian Media Limited. You came and you're telling the public basically that your solution, as far as what I heard you say, is giving tips to Crime Stoppers. And in the same measure, you talk about unacceptable levels of the crime and the homicide. Is the public supposed to accept this?
First of all, Mr. Basant, with the greatest of respect to you, that is not what I just told the public. The national security response to the fight against crime has all of the initiatives that we've been implementing. What I've said today is that I'm announcing a new initiative to provide us with tips. We identify that illegal firearms are the scourge that are creating that element of criminality in society. You've heard what we've been doing on Border Patrol. You've heard what we've been doing on the police side, the intelligence services. So it's quite wrong to suggest, and I'm certainly not suggesting, and if that was what was conveyed and what you interpreted, I'd like to correct it. No, that is not the solution. There is no one fixed solution to crime in Trinidad and Tobago. That is another element that we're asking for. We want to take the illegal firearms off the streets. We're trying to close down the borders. We're doing the best that we can there. We have intercepted. You heard the figures provided by Air Commodore Daniel of how many intercepts they've made out in the seas, etc. So that is not the solution to crime. It is yet another plank in the fight against crime.
But what do you tell the families of those who have lost, at least about 25 people have been killed in the last 6 days? And we're hearing this rhetoric of this talk of we're going to take the firearms off the streets. In February, before the Joint Select Committee, Mr. Ford spoke about over 8,000 illegal firearms flooding into this country. And we have had, just a drop in the ocean of that seizure becoming more pronounced. How are you going to deal with the situation? Are you just saying that, I know you've spoken about a number of initiatives, and you're adding the Crime Stoppers initiative to that. Is that enough to convey public confidence in the public of Trinidad and Tobago, where we have a homicide rate inching closer to 300, possibly at the end of the year, setting a new record? What are you going to tell the citizens of this country who are afraid to leave their homes and walk out of the streets at night or even at day where gunmen are king?
Mr. Basant, your use of language is very emotional and very emotive, and understandably so, because citizens at this time in our country's history are worried and are concerned about crime. I have started off today by saying the levels of crime are unacceptable. I have started off today by saying that we have implemented a number of initiatives. We can't get into the specifics. We are seeing some measures of success. We've heard ACP Ford tell us that within the last 24 to 48 hours, over 100 arrests have been made. These arrests that have been made, I can assure you, are not just a reaction. These arrests that have been made are not going and picking people up off of the streets. These are all intelligence driven. If there was that magic pill that we can use and we can swallow, I would be the first to prescribe it. If there were initiatives that can just be waving a magic wand, I would be the first to get that magic wand to do it. All I can tell the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago is you have our commitment. The men and women in the police service and the defense force are working overtime. We are not throwing our hands up in despair. And the fear-mongering and the use of emotive language and the touching on the raw nerves of our society right now is certainly not the solution. We are doing what we can. We will continue to put adequate resource, continue to resource where we can, and we will continue to fight the crime.
Peter Christopher, Guardian Media. Just going back to the matter of public confidence, the fact that you are now turning to a new initiative with Crime Stoppers.
An additional initiative.
Additional initiative. Is this a recognition that perhaps public confidence in national security agencies is shaken at this point in time, and you all are trying a new approach?
I think public confidence at this stage, I don't think it is targeted necessarily at national security. If that's where it's targeted, so be it, because we are the ones charged with the responsibility to try and make Trinidad and Tobago a safer place, and we accept that responsibility. What we're saying is that we need to work together. We're saying that we have been working. We're saying that we hope to see the results of a lot of these initiatives come to fruition soon. There is no simple solution. And I'd just like to make this point. Everybody has a role to play in the fight against crime, and also in the reassurance of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And that role is an important one. And what we're saying is we have been listening, but we've also been working.
On a related note, in terms of firearms, we've heard the talk about the sophisticated firearms being seized, but yet how many arrests have come out of these seizures? Isn't this also a worry that we are not seeing a significant amount of arrests and convictions related to these firearms that are being seized?
Actually, I think, again, statistically, that is incorrect. I don't have the statistics with me, but I quoted them in the Senate on 2 previous debates in the Senate with the bail amendment as well as the firearm amendment. Unless we find firearms just in abandoned lots or abandoned houses and pick them up like that, that's the only occasion where persons aren't charged for illegal firearms. All of the persons who have been found with illegal firearms have been charged. There have been a number of convictions, a vast majority. And what we're facing, and the reason for the bail amendment and the amendment to the Firearm Act, is we're seeing the ridiculous proposition coming to fruition that persons who are pleading guilty on some occasions being charged as low as $3,000 and being released because they've been convicted of an illegal firearm, paid a fine of $3,000, and they're free to walk out there on the street. There have been successful convictions of the illegal firearms, but what we're finding is that they're repeat offenders and they're just going back out there, picking up an illegal firearm again, which is why this legislation is specifically aimed at dealing with that ill.
An extension to that question, Mr. Ford, you spoke about 100 arrests in the last 48 hours or so. And we had this incident many years ago during the state of emergency where several people were held and arrested under the anti-gang legislation and so on. Some are charged and they go through the motions of the court, but we see a very low conviction rate for these people. Are we going to find ourselves in a similar situation? And secondly, you spoke about intelligence, Minister, as well, and about gang members knowing about operational intelligence and so on. But then you have issues where there are police reports talking about gang members being leaked information by police officers and other law enforcement. So that then it's essentially not a secret where you're going to tackle, where you're going to raid if they're tipped off by law enforcement officers. And how are you all treating with that problem? Because it seems to be a perennial problem, a very serious one that citizens have been hearing time and time again, but there's nothing being done to, in their terms, they're not seeing tangible results of these crooked law enforcement officers across the board being arrested and charged for aiding and abetting these gang leaders who are paying them money or giving them other things in kind to furnish them with information.
Let me just jump in here before Mr. Ford responds to that. The irony couldn't pass me by, because you yourself, Mr. Basant, seem to be the recipient of a number of confidential, secret reports that were derived in the national security arena. So perhaps you yourself could share with us in law enforcement and national security where these leaks are, where these tips are coming from. Because you're right, and I raised that less than 2 hours ago in my meeting, saying that it shocked me and it was upsetting to me that some of what we discussed on a Friday meeting ended up in a Sunday report. And I thought it was in a confidential meeting I was having on Friday, ended up in your Sunday report today. And of course, that is at a level where you're providing the information to the public, and you would say in the public's interest, and I'm not denying that. But it drives home the point that you're making, that we are being tasked with the responsibility of fighting criminals. And as I said at the outset, we can't get into operational discussions and discussions with the specifics of our operations. But it seems that elements within, so the enemy within is our worst enemy. And that is one of the things that I raised in the meeting a short while ago, and is a very frequent conversation and discussion. One of the ways we intend on dealing with that is by setting up more vetted units where persons will be polygraphed, persons are going to be carefully chosen, and we're going to be expanding that. And that is going to be the use of multi-agency units who we will then task with the sensitive operations. We had it recently when we were going after brothels and we're going after human trafficking. We got the intelligence, we knew where some of these institutions were being frequented, girls being prostituted, etc. And on the nights that we went to raid, woe and behold, nobody was there. We used a vetted unit and we met with success. So we know how we're going to be dealing with some of that.
Mr. Young, with my conversations with very senior members of the TTPS, has been that the information has been gathered over a period of time, and there seems to be inaction. And I think a lot of the police officers are upset or fed up, and even other law enforcement, the fact that there's no action internally. Hence the reason why they felt that the public needs to know in some measure what is happening on the inside. Not sharing, any operational or other types of information with me, and I wouldn't want to compromise those things. But the fact that these things have been sticking out like a sore thumb for quite a while, but yet there's inaction by other members inside of the law enforcement. So they felt it was time that the public know what is happening.
I have to say I'm a little bit surprised to hear that. But I do accept, for example, in reading over the last few months, there have been occasions when I've seen the media refer to reports that I haven't been privy to, and I've then had to call for these reports. I can give the assurance that now with the new Commissioner of Police and with officers such as Mr. Ford, I have seen firsthand that when intelligence is brought to our meetings, that intelligence has always been actioned and acted upon. So again, if there are persons in the police service who are frustrated and believe that they have intelligence and information and their superiors are not acting upon it, there are avenues. There are officers like Mr. Ford, there's a Commissioner of Police, Mr. Griffith. I too will hold myself out and available for those police officers to get the information to me. All information that is brought to me, I then ensure, as best as my office can, is acted upon and actioned. We just have... Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Nika Parsonal, CCN TP6. A lot of the recent fatalities we've seen have come in multiples. There are mass shootings. We had 5 in Westmoreland. Only 1 person died, but 5 people were injured. We had 3 in Laventille a few days before that. What specifically is happening, or has the TTPS or national security as a whole looked at the fact that these things are now happening? It's not just person to person, but it's now an attack on a crowd.
What you're seeing, I don't like the use of the term mass shootings. That just brings conjecture of what we see taking place in the United States, where someone goes into an area and just carries out. These are targeted shootings that we're seeing. But because of the type of weapons that are being used, these semi-automatic weapons, what it means is you just literally have to keep pulling a trigger until you run out of rounds. A lot of these criminals, of course, are not trained marksmen, etc. I'd like to correct the Westmoreland one, because when I went into the Friday meeting and used that particular example, I passed by that scene that took place on Thursday night at around 10:30, and saw all of the police cars. Curiosity almost took me to the scene, but I just figured, look, I don't know what's going on. It's not prudent for me to just turn up on the scene. What I was told on Friday meeting when I asked the head of that falls under Western, Mr. Prague, he actually told me that the information was correct. 5 people were not injured. It was 2 of them injured in the front seats. Still unacceptable. And as you see, the shooting in Laventille as well. What we're seeing is the use of the weapons, the type of weapons being used, and the availability of rounds of ammunition. Those are the consequences of it. And that is why we're adamant that we have to find and use new initiatives to try and get these weapons off of the street.
And just on your point with the Crime Stoppers initiative that you're trying to do, are you worried at all, or is the TTPS worried at all, that this is really a situation where now criminals may be just getting money for getting rid of guns that they fed up use?
That is one of the reasons I've been against, and the Commissioner of Police and myself have discussed it, and both of us are against a gun amnesty. For example, there is no initiative that's going to be 100% foolproof, if you want to use that language, but we want to implement this and give it a try. Let's see what results it brings. Any gun taken off the street that reduces the 8,000 that Mr. Ford referred to is a move in the right direction, whilst we marry that with making sure our borders are less porous. Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, good afternoon. Minister, I have 2 questions. One, with 24 murders in the last 6 or 7 days, do you think the government has lost the war on crime?
First one? Okay, yeah.
So, do you want a second one?
Let me answer the first one.
Sure.
I don't think that the government has lost the war against crime. I'd like to use that opportunity, Mr. Wilson, just to make the point, regardless of what government is in place, what government has been in place over the past few decades, there has been a struggle against crime. I've looked at it. I've looked at who, regardless of the ministers of national security, etc. To say our government has lost the fight against crime, that would be us giving up as a society. Certainly as the Minister of National Security, I am not prepared to say we've lost any fight against crime. I'd say that the current, what has taken place over the last 7 days is unacceptable. Hence the reason that we have put in place a number of initiatives. We've seen the results of some of those initiatives over the last 48 hours, and we will continue to do all that we can to combat this scourge of crime.
Second question is, and this was referred to earlier, the issue of the government through its regional corporations financing gang leaders. And if those reports are true, is the government part of the problem?
Again, when you say government, it gives a certain connotation. I have seen the reports. In fact, the reports have now been provided to me in a preliminary manner, because of course I asked about it when I saw what the media was reporting. What it seems to be is that there were a number of contracts awarded at the regional corporation level throughout Trinidad and Tobago to persons that they claim their associations with crime. What I have asked for, including a short while ago at the meeting this afternoon, if the TTPS have the specifics and they have the identities, and it is very easy, as I told them, to say gang leaders and criminals are getting contracts. Provide me with the specific details, provide me with who are the companies, which are the companies we need to look at, and it will be actioned and dealt with.
Minister, that is contained in the report, just to correct you. And also, Commissioner of Police...
What is contained in the report?
That very said thing you said in the special branch report. It is contained. The companies, the amounts of contracts, and the costing of contracts over the last 3 years.
Then you have a special branch report I haven't seen.
Well, it was published, so I think you should get a copy of The Guardian from last Wednesday soon. The Commissioner called you out yesterday, and just an extension to Mr. Wilson's question, about the fact that government officials are helping to fuel these
Commissioner, let me correct you immediately. The Commissioner did not call me out.
He said government officials. Aren't you a government official?
Okay, but government officials,
right.
So when you say one thing about the media, you say, well, the media has reported inaccurately. Does that mean you, Mark Basant, have reported inaccurately? I want to again correct, by use of saying government officials, are the persons who are awarding the contracts allegedly in the regional corporations. They are government officials. Government officials does not mean a cabinet member. It does not mean a minister. As I told you this week, Mr. Mark Basant, if it's the same Wednesday report, and I think you quoted me correctly and accurately, I personally have never awarded a contract. I personally have done the exact opposite. When it was brought to my attention that there was a specific company in East Port of Spain that had gotten CPEP contracts, I put an end to that, and that actually had a number of consequences that led thereafter.
Mr. Young, there's no particular reference to you, per se, it might be others, but is the Commissioner right in saying so, that the government officials have a part in playing in granting state contracts to well-known, reputed gang leaders who have a history or even is known to be involved in criminal activity based on intelligence that have been gathered not just over a month or 6 months, but for several years?
So again, in response to the Commissioner, and again in response to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service this afternoon, I've said, provide us with the information, provide us with the intelligence. It has to go beyond a certain threshold. It can't just be a whimsical, well, I think Mark Basant is involved in something. I think Anthony Wilson is involved in something. Bring it, show the evidence, show the affiliations. That is what it is going to be pursued under the anti-gang legislation and under the anti-crime operations that are taking place. But certainly, there cannot and should not be any intention on the behalf of government to fund through state contracts the criminal elements of society.
Minister, if memory serves me right, I think July 17th would have been the Commissioner's 1-year tenure.
It's actually next month.
Well, sorry, within the next 2 weeks or so, right? And you've said that the government has given him all the resources thus far in his fight against crime. Are you satisfied with his performance as a commissioner as he nears that one-year tenure? Is there room for improvement? Do you see things that he can do differently with the assistance of other law enforcement agencies and, by extension, the National Security Ministry?
I think society would accept that over the last year, when we hit that year mark next month in August, there has been an increased invigoration, a renewed energy in the fight against crime in Trinidad and Tobago. I think the Commissioner has done a good job. I think he's hit the ground running. I think he has gotten a lot of support. We have a new Chief of Defense Staff. His men and women in the Defense Force have been interacting with them on the ground level. There is a new energy running throughout the whole of law enforcement and the whole of policing and other areas of law enforcement in Trinidad and Tobago. It does not come down to one man. The Commissioner of Police himself, no matter who he is not going to be, again, that magic wand that solves crime. But what we're seeing is a renewed energy throughout. Officers such as Mr. Ford, it's only in the last year I've interacted with Mr. Ford and seeing what he's prepared to do, roll up his sleeves, get down on the ground. Those are the types of officers that are coming forward, and those are the types of officers we need to encourage. What I'm seeing with the Defense Force, I'm seeing in the prisons and the fire service. So I think Trinidad and Tobago, and I think the population, you're right to judge us, you're right to give us those scorecards, but I think you must accept that in the last year, there has been an increase in the push against crime.
Minister, has the Commissioner of Police shared his strategy to lower the homicide rate with you?
We constantly have...
Does he have a strategy?
Yes, there are strategies. Now, as you all would have seen, let's use the last week, for example. All of the murders, bar one last week, were through the use of illegal firearms. So that's one of the aspects we have to look at. Also, a lot of the homicides that took place in the last week were in some way gang-related. So again, that's another reason why I say we are going to focus on the gangs. On the homicide side, the detection as well as the investigation and the solving of, he is going to be utilizing foreign resources in the cold case unit. So yes, there are a number of initiatives. Again, I can't get into the specifics of the operations. Okay, I'd like to... Yes, sorry. Just take two more questions. On this side, Mr. Douglas.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. The 100 guys who were arrested recently, do we know what the timeline is for charging them and what happens?
It remains the same timeline it's always been in law. There's a specific period of time for the police to lay charges or to release them. The police will abide with that. Understand that every time a person is brought in for interrogation, interviewing, that provides us with another opportunity to gather further information and intelligence, and that's what is going on. And that can eventually lead to the type of charges that we're looking for. All right, I'll just take one more question.
Minister Young, given the 25 or so murders that took place over the past week, was any consideration given towards imposing a curfew or lockdown in specific hotspot areas?
There is no law in Trinidad and Tobago that allows you to provide a curfew or lockdown in law apart from a state of emergency. As I explained earlier this week, a state of emergency in our law can't be over a specific place in Trinidad and Tobago. It's over the whole of Trinidad and Tobago, and you can then implement different measures. The answer is no, we're not there. We're not looking at that. As I discussed several times with the heads of security last week, there's still a number of initiatives that we have to put in place before we reach that level. To me, a state of emergency is throwing your hands up in the air and saying there's nothing left, and we're not there.
Will the army be going into these places to assist the police?
The answer is yes.
Maybe even setting up a camp for a period of time just to try and stymie the killings along the east-west corridor?
Again, as you all would have seen, the killings are not in one concentrated area. So yes, to answer the first part of your question, the Defense Force is playing a part. It was even before last week, we had discussed and it had been implemented, the use and the increased use of Defense Force personnel in patrols. I've asked for Defense Force to be in their own vehicles, so not necessarily like an IATF setup, a police vehicle with a defense force vehicle behind, using intelligence. We just discussed it again because we know some of the areas, and we would be able to have predictive intelligence as to where certain things may take place, where we need to put resources. You are going to see the defense force supporting that. All right, thank you.
Minister Young, if you had one line to tell citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, especially those that live in hotspot areas, what would be your message to them, knowing that they're scared, they're petrified, that these gang members hold, some of them at ransom? There's even I was told by an officer that some of them were driven from their homes, and these gang leaders are using their homes as havens for other criminals. And I would not call it a division, but what are you going to tell these people? They have reached a breaking point, maybe even past breaking point, where we are fed up as a nation, the citizens are, and less talk, more action. What are you going to tell them in one sentence?
Less talk, more action has been my mantra from day one as the Minister of National Security. I started off by telling you all that. My sentence to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago is, don't give up, don't despair. We are aware of what is taking place, and we give our commitment that we will continue to do all that we can within the parameters of the law to make Trinidad and Tobago safer for you all. We will not rest. Thank you all very much.